It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That's Alan Saunders. I don't care what LT on YouTube says. That song almost makes me feel just a little bit better about doing this episode right now. That otherwise, I just have no interest in recording based off the way that the Steelers looked yesterday.
It was it's pretty bad. Pretty bad. It's going to be a tough one here. I think we're going to have some. Yeah.
I'm excited to see what the comments look like on this one specifically, because I think that everybody can identify with that things aren't good right now. Like just that general statement, like everybody can agree that the state of the Pittsburgh Steelers isn't good, but there's so many different opinions as to how high that level of blame goes, who all falls into that blame. When things look this bad, hey man, there's enough blame to go around, in my opinion.
Yeah, I actually feel like maybe like most of what I've seen from fans so far kind of undersells how bad of a game that was. Like, I'm just gonna go right here. I'm just gonna light the match.
Rip it off.
We're gonna start. How many of the 30 points that the defense gave up to the Houston Texans would you say are the fault of Matt Canada specifically?
You know what? I want to say 3 just because
30 points to the Houston friggin' Texans are on the offensive coordinator here. I mean, like, I get it. I get that he's the punching bag for everything, but like, there's 53 guys on that team and 13 coaches, and like, other than Brad Wing, I ain't got a good thing to say about any of them. So like,
I like to think of like 3 stars of the game, right? Almost as if it's like a hockey game. My 3 would be Chris Boswell because he didn't miss a kick. Brad Wing for the job he did punting and as well holding. And I thought Najee Harris had some looked okay considering.
Najee was fine. I actually saw Najee Harris come through the locker room today with you could kind of tell with a little back hurting.
Back was hurting.
Yeah. Yeah, you can kind of, you can kind of see. That's about it. It was there's not a good performance to be had on either side of the ball outside. I mean, it's pretty ugly. It's pretty ugly.
I feel like these day after game podcasts have been an absolute roller coaster for us. I mean, you look at this is very similar to week 1, probably a little bit worse because of the opponent it was that they lost to, but it's like, you look at the 2 weeks that were in between, it was like almost, okay, you looked at the defensive performance from week 2, feeling like maybe you saw a little bit of something from the offense in week 3. Now here we are again in week 4, taking several steps backwards as a team. And it's one of those losses that, at least for me, Alan, and I think that a lot of people in the fan base will resonate with this, it's so much more than just one loss in the loss column. Like it just it feels like so many things for them just collapsed from underneath them yesterday.
I'll say, we'll save some of this for later, but I'll say, that's by far the worst loss they've had in not just this year, but in a really long time. That's not a good team. The 49ers, I think we can go back and forth at exactly how good they are, but let's acknowledge the 49ers are a good team. Weird stuff happens in week 1. Even the Browns, the Browns have a really good defense. Not looking great against the Browns is not some kind of death knell. That's a bad Texans team. They're probably going to finish in last place in their division. They're not good. And they beat 36 kind of undersells how much of a beatdown that was. The Texans kind of let the Steelers hang around for longer than they deserved to. Probably should have been out of the game earlier than they were.
I mean, that the possession where Kenny gets hurt on that 4th and 1, they have a chance to make that a 1-possession game on that drive. There was no reason.
They go down there and score a touchdown. The Steelers should win the game. I kind of hinted to it. I was like, I think if you want to be very charitable for the Steelers, and they're not giving us any reason to do so, I think you can really look at the sequence of events of that game and talk yourself into it not being that bad. but I'm not sure we're there yet. I think we need to like break down all of the things that went wrong first.
Yeah, I mean, let's like on the coaching side of things here for a first year staff in Houston. They just mopped the floor in my opinion with the Pittsburgh Steelers staff. And you look at what Bobby Slowik had to work with there with that offensive line situation. I mean, I don't even know. I thought by the end of this game going into it, TJ and Alex would be able to tell me exactly what type of cologne and deodorant CJ Stroud was wearing. I mean, I know Alex
not a sniff to line up with your analogy there quite well.
Yeah, I thought that Slowik had the perfect game plan, understanding the personnel that he had and understanding what was on the other side.
They picked him apart. I mean, it was clinical. It was not like the Steelers didn't tackle very well, I didn't think. But it's not like guys were like flailing and missing. Like it was not just horrendous football by the Steelers defenders as much as it just was a clinical picking apart of the Steelers defense in ways that were like pretty like if you're Bobby, like you said, like this is a guy who has dealt a hand that you can only play one way. Like there's no like they weren't going to come out and throw the ball 70 times. Like you kind of knew the only way the Texans could win that game was to establish the ground game, get in good down distance situations, and let Stroud thrive on that. Like that's the only way for that team to win that game, and they did it so easily. Like I don't know if CJ Stroud needed deodorant. I don't ever feel like he broke a sweat. Like he was just chilling back there. Like that didn't even feel hard for the Texans to do that to the Steelers defense. And I think that's the real concern to me. We talked a lot this offseason about the pieces on the Steelers defense being a little bit mix and match, right? Where they have kind of like maybe some heavier guys if they want to go play the Ravens this week. Like, it's probably going to be a lot of Landon Roberts, going to be more Keanu Neal, going to see maybe more of the nose tackles or another game, like a Bengals game, right? Where you might see more of Joey Porter Jr. and Patrick Peterson and DeMonte Casey and guys like that. I think the Texans really, did a good job of exposing the flaws in that plan. They spread the Steelers out and they ran against them. And the skinny looks couldn't tackle. And then the Steelers tried to play the heavier looks and they threw on them. And it was very, like I said, it was easy. Like it was just outside zone. Here you go. 3-4 yards every time. Mike Tomlin said after the game, like the line was, the pile was falling forward, and like that's a dumb thing to care about when your team gets beat 30-6. But I just felt like it was indicative of like every little thing was going the Texans' way. Like they were just getting everything they wanted every time, and man, like, and to me, no one reasonably expected this Steelers offense to be great. Right? Like we did not think, this is a team that's going to go out there and put 40 points on the board week in and week out. No one picked Kenny Pickett to be like a Pro Bowl quarterback, right? Like this was an offense that I think we all knew was going to need some time to come together. There were going to be some growing pains. It felt like a unit that's like kind of still a year away, right? From arriving at what they still possibly could be. The defense, on the other hand, is old. It's experienced. Now, there are some new pieces being put together, but like this should be the unit that is leading this team to victory. And it got dominated by a rookie quarterback, a first-time offensive coordinator, a first-time head coach with 5 backup offensive linemen. And like, with all due respect, like, ain't nobody out there in this league shaking about facing Dameon Pierce and Tank Dell either. Like, those are players that I like. Like, I think they're fun young players, and I'm like excited for their careers. But it's not Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey over there. Like, these are just okay eligibles with a rookie quarterback. Like, there's just it's if the Texans can do that to the Steelers defense, then every NFL team can do that to the Steelers defense, basically.
Yeah, and Nico Collins as well, who was the one that really lit them
Collins,
up. Yeah,
Brevin Jordan. Like what? Like, I mean, Dalton Schultz is a good player, but like, come on, like, what are we doing here? Like, every team has a player at least that good.
Um, I mean, does it feel to you like this defense is exclusively built? I mean, we know how important getting home is, getting the pass rush, but if that pass rush isn't there for one game, like everything else just seems to fall apart on the defensive side of the football.
You cannot allow mediocre teams with bad offensive lines to run the ball against you. You just can't. Like, it can't happen. And they did. And that's, it's not like, I mean, Pierce had what, 80, 85 yards? Like, it's not like it was like 150 yards rushing, but it was more than enough to keep Stroud from ever being in a position that he had to throw the ball. Like, he never got into third and long. And I thought that the screen game was a weapon for them. But again, those things, you're not calling screens on 2nd and 10. You call screens on 2nd and 5, and I just thought that all of it started with the inability to stop the run. And yeah, I mean, I don't think this is a team that's very well built to play from behind on both sides of football. I think that's very clear. But the defense cannot be that susceptible to the run. And, to my first point, how much of the defense you want to blame Matt Canada for? Defense is on the field a lot in the first half. They come out in the second half. The Steelers ran the ball really well. First 3 drives of the second half, the Steelers were churning time of possession. That defense is well rested. And after they give up the 4th down, where Pickett gets hurt, they drive right down the field and end the game. Like that, like the defense wasn't tired then. Like they weren't tired on the first drive of the game when they hot knife through butter right down to a touchdown. Like yeah, like there's no excuses for it. I mean, I understand I think maybe this is not a defense that has like outstanding personnel at every spot. There's a lot on the shoulders of guys like Alex Highsmith and TJ Watt and Minkah Fitzpatrick to make big plays. And if they don't make them, I don't know. Like that was a butt kicking.
Yeah, well, the reason that I say that is just because I don't know that they employ a secondary that can cover for long enough if that pass rush doesn't get home. Of course, with stopping the run on the defensive side of the ball too, but specifically in terms of on passing plays, if the pass rush doesn't get home, I just don't know that they, they're corners, and we can have a conversation about that too, because the conversation about Joey Porter Jr. seeing more time, I think, is only going to continue to ramp up.
Yeah, I mean, I think Joey Porter needs more playing time. I don't think that he needs to start, but I think we need to start seeing him take some snaps at outside. You can rotate corners. Like, it's not like tackle where you got to play one or the other. I think we need to see a little bit more. I think that's past due for that. But I don't think he's not some kind of like catch-all solution. Like, he's not going to be great right away. Like that, they have to find a way to be better schematically. I don't think it's. I feel like this is more an X's and O's loss for the defense than it was. Like I said, like I didn't think anybody had like 5 missed tackles. I didn't see like guys running uncovered through the defense, missed assignments, busted coverages, guys falling down. Like you didn't see players losing. I think you saw a defense as a scheme just get decimated in that game. And that's really concerning.
Yeah. And in terms of stopping the run, I mean, that's been a thing for years now, with them being unable to stop the run and them not finding a solution there. One solution that seems to be, and again, it's not going to be one guy that comes in and solves it all, but man, I like 3 weeks in a row now, we've been calling for Braden Fehoko to get a helmet to at least be some type of solution.
He's got to play. I don't understand why he didn't play. He should have played in this game. He absolutely has to play this week against Baltimore. He's their best run-stopping defensive lineman for a defensive line that has not stopped the run all season. It's no brainer. I still don't understand why he hasn't been playing more. I don't get it. This mix and match defense is putting a lot of pressure on when you don't have like guys that are just. I think I've made it's the fantasy manager analogy, right? Would you rather have 2 average wide receivers who alternate having good weeks, or would you just have one? Do you want 2 guys who are either 25 points or 5, or do you want one consistent 15-point guy, right? Well, if you have the 25 points or 5, then the skill falls on you, the manager, to make sure you're playing the right one at the right time. I feel like that's where this defense is running into trouble, is that they have talent and they're not getting the right talent on the field at the right time because they're not managing it correctly. Not playing Braden Fehoko, I feel like, is one of those aspects. There are a number of them. When you see a Landon Roberts 15 yards downfield with that big old 5-0 staring at the quarterback because he's running his butt off backwards to go cover somebody, that tells you, one, 50 shouldn't have been in the game right there. Like that's what it tells you. Like that's the wrong thing. Like I think we're, the Steelers have somehow defensively schemed Minkah Fitzpatrick out of making big plays. That they're trying to use him all over, and it's not working. They're not getting anything out of their best player on their defense, or one of their best players on their defense, in terms of impacting the game. I'm sure that the ball is not being thrown to the guy he's covering as often as it would be if somebody else was there, but he's not able to be Minkah Fitzpatrick. Like, I think I really feel like the defensive staff is dropping the ball in terms of the deployment of these players in a significant way.
Led the team in tackles in 2021. He's on pace to break that number in 2023 with the amount of tackles he has so far this year. That absolutely should not be the case. You mentioned this team not being built to play from behind. You feel like on both sides of the ball. Well, at least in terms of offensively, Matt Canada, the guy running the offense, agrees with you. He said as much to the announcing crew that we had for the game yesterday. Let's switch the conversation out of the offensive side and just go from there. 6 points in this game, another game not having 400 yards. They have yet to produce 400 yards of offense in Matt Canada's 39 games as offensive coordinator. Every other team has done it at least 4 times, just throwing that statistic out there. Alan, we talked about Najee Harris. There's nothing else from the offense that they showed yesterday to really even like pluck a positive out of, is there?
I guess the run blocking would be the other thing you could kind of, but man, I felt like a lot of that was just Najee doing it as
I agree.
Dang self. Yeah. Like, not like they were gaping holes. I like some of the scheme things they did with the run. They did some trap, which we haven't seen a lot of so far. I think some of the run stuff was good. My big thing about the offense and is 2 things. One, they still cannot start a game to save their life. It is just mind-boggling to me that you can come out of a week of practice and say, here's our best plays. These are the ones we like. These are the ones we feel good about with our players for this matchup. These are the ones we want. They're the ones we practice the most. We're going to call these at the beginning of the game, and they suck every single week. It should not be possible. It is absolute failure as an offensive staff for that to happen. It cannot happen every week. It just can't happen. And I really think in this game specifically, like, things get out of hand quickly in the NFL if you're not playing very well. And the Steelers couldn't keep it in hand, right? The defense goes down and gets scored on. Offense turns the ball over. Defense goes down and gets scored on again. And all of a sudden it's 10 points. And we just talked about this team not being built to come back from behind. Well, and then, I think some other stuff starts happening to the offense at that point where I think they get away from the run a little bit too much. It's understandable when you're down 10 points, but I do think they got away from the run in the rest of the first half a little bit too much. They, to their credit, went back to it early in the second half, and that's the only reason it was a game, right, with those 2 long drives. And then, but when you can't throw it, as the field gets, that's what's going to happen to an offense that can't throw, right? You can work the ball between the 20s, but when the defense starts to get condensed in the red zone, if you can't throw, it's going to be really easy to defend the run. And that's what happens. And so they go down, long drive, field goal, long drive, field goal, long drive. They have to go for it on 4th down. Kenny gets hurt. It just looked like an offense that could not throw the ball. Some of that is scheme. Some of that is play calling. Some of it is Kenny Pickett was awful. I don't have a better way to say that. Like, he was another really, really bad performance. He was running himself into pressure. He was missing open. He was not finding the open guy in the scheme. There's one, he throws the ball away and Darnell Washington's in the middle of the field. Like, the guy's 6'9". Like, you can't miss that. It's like missing a pine tree. Like, and the other one, Allen Robinson, double covered on the goal line. Connor Hayward wide open in the corner.
Yeah.
Those have to be, those are plays that have to be made. Like, I can't, it's just not good enough. And then the play that he gets hurt, he needs to stay in that pocket. There's no reason for him to leave the pocket by turning his back to the play. It's bad quarterbacking, and it got him hurt. Like, Broderick Jones is standing there like, what am I supposed to do? quarterback's on the wrong side of the block for no good reason. Like, like that. You can't do that stuff and be successful. And so, I've said, and I think I've been pretty steadfast in this. The only rational source of anger about Matt Canada is whether or not he does a good job of developing Kenny Pickett. Everybody hates the play calls always in every offense under the sun. You hated every other offensive coordinator the Steelers have ever had too, and they won a whole bunch of Super Bowls with a bunch of them. The play calling's fine. It's not great. It's not inspired. No one's like copycatting it. There's plays out there to be made. But if he can't develop Kenny Pickett as a quarterback, nothing else matters because he can't do the job if he can't do that. Period. That's it. We have not seen that development from Kenny Pickett. Now, if you want to feel better about this week, I don't expect there to be any downside at all to Mitch Trubisky playing. In fact, I think he might be better. My expectation is that the Steelers will get their best quarterbacking of the year this week with Mitch Trubisky playing. And I'm not saying that I'm not trying to bash Kenny. Like, he hasn't been good enough. It just doesn't like. It's bad. It's bad.
Alan, you mentioned the way they come out in games. This isn't just the first drive, but first quarter drives in general. They have more that end in a turnover than they do touchdown, with those numbers being 15 turnovers, 13 touchdowns since 2021. I mean, that is a very damning stat. As far as Trubisky, I actually wanted to bring up this point because it was something that I thought about. And I posted this on X. That's still weird for me to say. In the short term, right, going from Kenny to Mitch, there's not, in my opinion, a drop off in what they're going to give you on the field. If anything, like you said, you might even see an elevation in quarterback play from Mitch this week. But I think what you're losing is meaningful reps for Kenny, right? Because you're trying to figure out if this is a guy, if this is part of the solution going forward, or if you got to say, man, we got to scrap it. Like we are on the search again for another franchise quarterback, and that's what you're losing with any amount of reps that Kenny Pickett doesn't play.
Yeah, I saw Kenny in the locker room today walking, a bit gimpy, but no big bulky brace or anything like that on his knee. I'm not going to try to pretend to be pro football doc guy and diagnose somebody from watching him walk through the locker room, but it certainly was not a guy who looked like his season was over.
Right.
All the parts were still in the correct order and they weren't being mechanically aided to be there, right? So that's a good start. But man, like, he's got to be so much better. And I will say this, and are we ready to hear this? I don't know if we're ready to hear this. We're going to go hear that. But like, I do think you can just talk yourself into like that game getting out of hand and then the team being unable to come back. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they can't win a game where like a bunch of random stuff doesn't happen, right? Like, Kenny can't turn the ball over there. Yeah. Okay. It wasn't a very good throw. It probably wasn't a good decision. But, ghost personal foul penalty on Minkah Fitzpatrick on the first drive.
Oh, man. Yeah.
I mean,
right before the Texans scored their third touchdown of that drive.
Scored for the third time, right? That comes through. There's another one on Pat Freiermuth the other way, coming right after that, on offensive pass interference call that was just totally out of nowhere. I mean, look, bad decision and bad throw aside, that ball is probably not an interception like 85% of the time. Like normally that just gets batted down, or it's a combat catch win. I think George Pickens had a very good game in terms of coming up with the balls that he normally comes up with. Like, it's hard to sit here and say like this is George's fault because they're low percentage catches, but that's George's whole thing, is being the guy that catches the low percentage passes, and he did not do that in that game the way he normally does. Like, there's just a lot of stuff that happens, and then the game gets out of hand, and the Steelers just are not built to come back from it. But that doesn't mean that like they would lose that game. Like, they could have won that game. They just can't get behind that much that early. And even after they come behind that much that early, all they need is Kenny to stand in that pocket and throw that ball on 4th and 1, and they might still win the game. They would certainly still have their starting quarterback. And so, and there's it's really hard. I think when you have this much going wrong, it's honestly really hard to talk about any one thing for too long, because everything else starts bleeding into it, right? I mean, like that's part of the problem when Nick wrote at SteelersNow.com, go read it. The Steelers have an everything problem, and that's really the facts, right? And then I wrote, well, that means they have a head coach problem, because that means that Mike Tomlin's not good enough. I mean, that's like if you have a problem, if you have that many problems all over the place, then either your team just stinks and you have no good players, which I don't believe to be the case. Although, I mean, we do need to talk about like the number of injuries at this point. Dan Moore lost on the first drive of that game. Didn't come back. Doesn't look great. Kenny, obviously, down. DeMarvin Leal missed the fourth quarter. I feel like there was another one in there too.
Pat Freiermuth.
Yeah, Pat Freiermuth. Right. So, I mean, look, let's have a conversation about the offensive weapons with no Deontay Johnson and no Pat Freiermuth. Yeah, it's pretty bad. Like, I mean,
you know what? I almost want to pick the phone up and call Chicago and get Claypool back in here.
No, I think the last thing this offense needs.
I'm joking.
Personality, but the player. How about this? Like, let's see what New England wants for Juju. Like, can we do that instead? Because like they need another playmaker. They don't like, too much is being put on Calvin Austin's shoulders right now. I said coming into the year, like, I thought he would have a small role and he'd be good at a small role. This feels like too much for him right now. Like that ball shouldn't have been intercepted. It wasn't a good pass, but he shouldn't let that get intercepted either. George, look, it's just, he's a good player. I love George. Like, he does things that make my jaw drop all the time, but he is not a dominant number one receiver right now. He is not that guy. He's not Stephon Diggs or Justin Jefferson. Like, he's not that good. And there's nobody else. Like, Allen Robinson has been invisible most of the time. I think partially it's the team's inability to find him. Like, Kenny just doesn't find him, but he's not making an impact. Pat Freiermuth, yeah, you needed me to tweet out that he was hurt, because otherwise you would just think that he was just in the offense and not being used like he had been the last 3 weeks anyway. Like, he hasn't done anything all year. And so I don't know, man. It's an offense that has a ton of flaws, but I do think the injuries now starting to pile up in a pretty significant way, in terms of just, there's only so many good players, and you're playing out without Cam Hayward on the other side, Deontay, James Daniels, Freiermuth, like, they're not in a position to be absorbing that kind of negativity outside of quarterback. It's one place where they are really deep, but they're not deep enough at wide receiver and on the offensive line. Really, with that offensive line they were playing with for 3/4 of that game, with Nate Herbig in at guard and Broderick Jones in at left tackle, like, it's not surprising to me that, I mean, again, the play where Kenny gets hurt is Kenny's fault, but like that, it's not surprising to me. That's the kind of line that gets your quarterback hurt. Like, that's not good pass protectors right there, left to right. It's just not.
Yeah, I agree. Alan, can I act as the since I represent the fans anyway, can I act as the spoiled Steelers fan?
Yeah, of course. Or what was Mike's what was Mike's quote?
Oh, fat, sassy, and spoiled.
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Well, good news.
I'm not sure I've ever described you as sassy before. But maybe you could give us. Maybe you could give us sassy.
After that game, I think there might be a little bit of sassy that could come out. Again, understanding that this isn't all on one person, and I know that Matt Kennedy gets enough blame as it is, but when you talk about the sample size now, again, 39 games, about to be 40, I would anticipate that isn't the change that Mike Tomlin is talking about when he says that there are going to be changes. And I'm not. And I want to preface by saying I hate these types of people that are like this, but without the fan base of a team, the team doesn't exist. If I think that it's fair to say, while most people, everybody understands that there is a problem, I think most people are looking at Matt Canada as being, public enemy number one. Is it a disservice to the fan base that he is still employed at this point as the offensive coordinator of this team?
Well, I don't think, I mean, with due respect, like the fan base in that regard can't really matter. It's about what's going to be the best for the team. I really want to do some more research into this. That's going to be my work tonight and tomorrow morning, into how often teams change coordinators in the middle of the year and have to go with a coordinator from outside their organization and end up better off for it. My gut feeling is that almost never happens, that you make that move and you don't end up any better. There is not another offensive coordinator inside this organization, period.
I would agree. I guess from at least my perspective, and also just trying again to bring the general fan into this conversation, is what is lower? Like, does it matter if it isn't where they're at right now? Like, how much lower can they get from where they are right now?
It's not about what's lower. It's about what's more likely to get better, right? Like, are you more likely to get better working within the same system that you've been working in and just fixing some of the things that are wrong? Or are you more likely to get better by throwing the whole thing out and starting over? It's really hard to change what you're doing as a team in the middle of a football season. I mean, there are going to be like 20 reps for the first team, live reps, between now and next week. Like, you can't do anything with 20 reps. Like, it's really hard to week, like, start to introduce new concepts, let alone come up with an entire new offense. Like, at the very most, you're going to put in like 10 new plays a week. Like, that's like really pushing it. Like, I can't, I have a hard time getting my head around, outside of maybe the bye week, there being enough time in a week to make any kind of meaningful change by replacing a coach. I will say this. I think you could bring in someone from the outside, get a new set of eyes on things. Maybe that helps. Maybe it doesn't, but there's no downside, right? Like, go get your hands on Byron Leftwich, right? And bring him in the building and say, we want to see what you're seeing. And how can we be better? Like, there's no downside to that move. There's no downside to Mike Tomlin coming over and saying, hey, I might call some offensive plays this week. I don't think Mike is built to be an offensive play caller, but that type of involvement from the head coach, he was a wide receiver. Like, I think we over talk about how he's like this defensive guy. Like, he knows offense too. That's reasonable. Those are changes that I think you can make. You can fire a position coach if you really think it's all like Mike Sullivan's fault and that's the reason Kenny's not developing. I'm not saying that's what I think. I'm just saying if that's what the team thinks, then fire the position coach. You can do that. I think replacing a coordinator from the outside is really hard, and I don't see an inside option that makes a lot of sense to me. And a lot of times what teams do is like, oh, we run this kind of offense, so we're going to fire our coach and hire this other guy who also ran this kind of offense somewhere else. There's no Matt Canada offense coaching tree to pull from other places, right? Like, it's not like it's not like, we had a former Shanahan assistant and we fired him, so let's hire another former Shanahan assistant and see if they can do this job. Like, that's not what the Steelers have. They don't have. I feel like the Ravens have done that a couple times where they've just like gone back into their past and like hired an old guy mid-year to like try to get through. There is no old guy running this offense anywhere. There hasn't experience running this offense. If you're a Pitt fan, you remember what happened when someone else tried to call Matt Canada's plays in 2017. It did not go well at all. Like, it was horrible. Now, maybe Sean Watson is just a horrible offensive coordinator, but like, I think it's hard for me to envision things getting better that way. I think it would make people feel better that action was done.
Yeah.
But in terms of like the team getting better, I have a real hard time seeing Mike Tomlin coming out of his press conference tomorrow says Matt Canada is fired, blah, blah, blah is going to happen. And Sunday against the Ravens, they score 40 points. Like, that's just not going to happen.
And I think that might be where the discrepancy is, because like, obviously the team trying to win every football game as possible. I think as fans, a large portion of them would sacrifice some wins if they knew it meant real change happening within the coaching staff.
Yeah, I just don't think that's the way that any team is ever going to approach it. Like,
absolutely, yeah,
they want to make the playoffs. Like, and like, look, they're 2-2. Like, it's not like the season is over. Like, that's a horrible loss, but they're right where probably a lot of people predicted them to be right now, except flip the Houston and Cleveland game results, right? I mean, if you just look at the wins and losses and not the way they got there, I don't think 2-2 this point of the season would have raised some preseason panic flags, right? Like, it's not like they're 0-4 and it's like, oh, let's go get Caleb Williams. Like, that's off the table. Like, this team's not going to be that bad. It's just that they're really showing that they can lose every game they're in. And that's problematic.
Yeah, absolutely. We will pick up the conversation tomorrow. I think we're probably going to talk about a lot of the things that we did talk about today. Obviously, Tomlin Tuesday will be tomorrow. Hopefully get some updates on these injuries and stuff like that. But Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
At @Saunders_PGH, at PGH Steelers Now on Twitter, X, whatever, SteelersNow.com. Subscribe, use the code Allen10, 10% off. Derek's got some dudes and duds in there. I'm going to write something probably today or tomorrow in there. Derek's going to have some film coming. So lots of good stuff. Good stuff from the trip. I'm tired. I need to sleep. And rewatch this game and then think about it some more.
No smokers or anything like that in the back of any vehicles.
No, like it's not a great like tailgatey place. I don't know. I was really? Underwhelmed by the entire experience. I like Houston. That's the first time I've ever been there. Nice city. But the stadium area is weirdly antiseptic. Wasn't a big fan.
Gotcha. All right. Well, I am Zachary Smith, PGH. As Alan said, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell, comment down below.
It did have some really good barbecue, though, to interrupt.
Well, see, there we go. That's what matters.
It was at a restaurant, not, tailgate. But I didn't go to Texas and not get barbecue. Let's just set the record straight.
Yeah, there. I think that's important. I think we would have gotten a lot of comments about that happening if you didn't. So glad to set the record straight there. Speaking of comments and setting records straight, I'm about to play our outro music, which is awesome, LT. So we're going to play that again. Get us to 10,000 subscribers on YouTube so we can play the full version. I know LT will really enjoy that as well when we.
Oh, I got to say who the jersey is not. Jersey is not. Let's see. It is not Dan Moore or Broderick Jones.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Left tackle.
Not the most recent first round pick. That could have been a popular one.
Tackle. There you go.
All right. Well, also, if you're listening somewhere else, leave us a 5-star review. Do all that good stuff for us. We appreciate it. Check out the site. Alan, Nick, Derek, everybody else providing great work over there. Until next time, for Alan Saunders, I'm Zachary Smith. Thanks for jumping in and taking another ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive.